Normally when you hear music, you only hear the finished version of it. But I also knew how much work went into all of the individual parts. Wouldn't it be cool if there were a show where you could get exposed to that stuff? And it didn't really exist anywhere.
Hey, Camp Slate.
I'm Hrishikesh Hirway. I'm a singer and songwriter, and I'm the host of Song Exploder, which is a podcast and also a Netflix show. Fundamentally, Song Exploder is a podcast about somebody's story. Every episode of Song Exploder is a story about someone's experience, where they made something out of nothing. Hi, welcome to my studio. Come on in. So this is my studio. It used to be the garage when we first moved in here, and then a year ago, we finally finished construction on it, turning it into what it is now. When I built the studio, the idea was to have a space where I could not just make the podcast, but also make my own music. It's big enough that I can also have my musical instruments here and potentially have other people come over and record as well. When Song Exploder first started to take off a little bit, the first thing that I got was this piano. My mom, when I was growing up, really wished we had a piano. I used to play this little Yamaha keyboard when I was learning how to play, but she always wanted a real piano in the house, and we never had one. So in 2016, I was finally able to get this, and that was a really important moment for me. Growing up, my parents didn't really listen to American radio. We didn't have a lot of Western music. We mainly listened to Bollywood stuff. I feel like it was the first music that gave me a feeling. There was something about that music and the sound of that music that I loved. In middle school, one of the kids on the bus stop would have a tape, and that was the first time I heard Beastie Boys, NWA, Ice-T, Public Enemy, Metallica. It's exciting. It's kind of dangerous. Not be stuff that I'm going to listen to with my parents. And I feel like that was sort of the moment when I started to be like, oh, this is music that I like. I don't think I had any kind of inclinations towards music making. It was only when I went to high school that things, I think, started to change. I started playing in bands. And then another huge shift happened when I got to college. And I realized this is something that I want to do with my life. And I started playing under the name the 1 AM Radio. I just wanted to spend as much of my life doing that as I could. Another thing that's moved with me from place to place over many years are these two posters. This was the last sort of big 1 AM radio tour that I did before starting Song Exploder, and kind of the last tour that I did under the name the 1 AM Radio. It's also nice because the tours were with Dintel, Jimmy Tamborello, who was also the first guest on Song Exploder. So starting the podcast was really, like a family affair of working with my friends and people who I'd spent a lot of time with. These posters are kind of a moment where it crossed from making music all the time to starting the podcast. I put out my fourth album as the 1 AM Radio in 2011. At that point now, I'd been doing it for 11 years. It was my life, but it was feeling really hard. I was basically burnt out. So for the first time in my life, I thought, let me see what else. And that's around the time when Song Exploder started percolating. I'd taken some inspiration from Tape Op magazine, which I loved and had been a huge inspiration for me in terms of making my own records. But one of the things that I had missed from that experience was being able to hear some of the things that I would read about. Normally when you hear music, you only hear the finished version of it. You hear the sort of the mix of all of the different instruments. But I also knew from personal experience how much work went into all of the individual parts. So wouldn't it be cool if there were a show where you could get exposed to that stuff? I interview an artist about the process that went into one of their songs, and their story is intercut with the isolated parts of a recording. So they can say, this song started really with this piano part, and you could hear the piano part with everything else taken away. The show is like a tiny, tiny little biography, and the song is the lens that you're getting to look at the person through. And it didn't really exist anywhere. So I decided I was going to try and make a pilot. People don't really play the instruments here when we're doing the podcast interviews. The only exceptions are when Neil Finn from Crowded House played the piano. And then Yo-Yo Ma, when he was here for his episode, he played my cello, which was pretty wild because he also had his incredible cello with him, but he did pick up my cello as well. So there was his Stradivarius in the room, and then also my $500 cello, and Yo-Yo Ma got to play both of them. When he did that interview, I had no idea that some years later, he would volunteer himself to play cello on one of my songs. So that's pretty cool. At the end of 2023, I got the chance to do an episode with Dave Grohl about a Foo Fighters album that they had recently put out. And I asked the questions that I normally ask, which song do you think he would like to talk about? And the answer came back immediately. He wants to talk about The Teacher. The song is about his mother, who had passed away. There was a lot of heavy stuff to talk about. There was a lot of joy to talk about. I told him about an experience that I had having written a song about my own mother who had passed away. How I felt that there were sort of two stages of grief, because one, there's the grief after I lost her, but then I wrote this song and felt the second wave of grief of, having done all of this and now I don't get to share it with her. He said something so surprising and beautiful where he just dismissed my premise entirely. That was a really special one.
And that's when The Teacher started to take shape.
I was wondering how you felt about this, but a few years ago, my mom passed away.
I'm sorry.
And I wrote a song about her. And, there's this whole process of grief that you go through, and then you try and put it together in a song. But then there was like this extra little coda of grief for me, which is that I could never let her know that I did this thing for her.
I don't believe that. I bet you could. I bet she knows.
Is that how you feel about your mom?
Yes.
And this song?
Yeah. She's here. She knows. For sure. Yeah.
How do you think she feels about it? About the song?
Yeah.
That's how we ended the episode. When new people have joined me to work on Song Exploder, one of the things I've tried to tell them is to imagine the show as a sort of dream. And we never want to wake the listener up from the beginning to the end. Well, now I'm 10 years into it, and one of the big things that's changed about Song Exploder over the years is that I went from being a thing that I did by myself to now it's something that I make with other collaborators. It's so much more fun to do it with other people. I kind of just hope that I can keep doing that, and it would be exciting to imagine that it might continue to evolve and take on a different form in my life. I think that's part of what's exciting for me. Like this year of Song Exploder, different from every other year. So far, I think that's what's happened.
Anybody out there in the universe, like if you were to manifest, who would be the person you'd like to have on the show?
We do not have time for that. It's too long. The list is too long.
Okay.